this is a thought that'll keep you awake at night. Our souls are infinite because we are a part of Source. We are a part of the universe. We are part of God, whatever you want to call it. That's infinite. It's all knowing. It's omnipotent. So your soul, as it is a part of Source, wants you to be able to feel that love and understand love for others through your human experiences and experiences on other planets, if that's where your soul wants to take you. You're there to help support that memory. So we can, because the soul would not have taken the client there if they didn't need to go there.
We all contain magic. The question is, how do you contain your magic? I'm your host, Sonia Bayon. I'm a transformational coach, yoga educator, singer, and embodied alchemist. I'm here with you today to share the stories, the practices, and the awakenings that truly contain her magic. Let's begin. Hello, my beauties, and welcome to episode 11 of Contain Her Magic. In this episode, we're bringing the past to light. We're going to take a deep dive into what the soul remembers and the body knows. I recently had the pleasure of having a conversation with Julianne Thon, a hypnosis practitioner and the host of the Souls on Tap podcast. I was also a guest on her show not long ago, so it feels really special to now continue the conversation here. I believe that her podcast episode with me airs this week. Julianne's work centers around guiding people into the deeper layers of the subconscious, helping them explore patterns, experiences, and stories that often sit just beyond our conscious awareness. Through introspective hypnosis, she supports people in understanding what may be shaping their fears, their habits, and even their gifts, whether those roots lie in this lifetime, within their lineage, or somewhere more difficult to explain. At the heart of her work is a deep trust in the soul's journey, in the idea that healing begins with love, and that within each of us lives an inner wisdom quietly guiding us toward remembrance, alignment, and wholeness. She creates space for people to access that inner knowing, where healing can unfold naturally and in ways that are both profound and lasting. This is a conversation that moves into places we don't always have language for, but that many of us can feel, like a moment of déjà vu or a sense that something within us remembers, even when we don't fully understand why. Get ready for where this conversation takes us. Julianne, welcome to Contain Her Magic. I'm so pleased to have you with me here today. How are you?
I am doing great. And thank you for having me on your show. And I have been looking forward to this too. It's fun to be on a podcast as a guest for a change.
That's right. Yeah. Well, as mentioned, you interviewed me recently, so now it's my turn. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we discover in our conversation today. I have some questions that are relevant, I think, to a lot of people in terms of understanding what is hypnosis and specifically introspective hypnosis. So maybe we can start with telling us a little bit about what it is and what brought you to this work.
Well, what brought us to this work is a long story. I have always had the good fortune to be around the matriarchs in my family who, by the time I was in high school, were speaking, talking about, and studying religious science and science of the mind, and Ernest Holmes and Louise Hay and all of the people from way back when that helped to get us started and helping us understand the importance of what we think. Our words and our thoughts have power, and how we are responsible for those words and thoughts in terms of what we manifest. So that was pretty early on. Probably by the time I was in high school, I had sort of shifted from the Disciples of Christ Christian denomination to science of mind, and that was in the latter 70s, and so that was prudent time for everybody who was sort of coming out of their shells and doing things that weren't necessarily cohesive to what our parents had done, etc.
Right.
So I have to give my mother and my grandmother thanks for starting me out there.
As we begin, I want to gently acknowledge that part of Julianne's journey includes a deeply personal and emotional experience. We speak about it with care, and I invite you to listen in the way that feels right for you.
Years later, I got married and moved to Phoenix and eventually had a little one, Evan, who was born in 1995. And by the time Evan was probably about 4 to 6 months old, I was able to tell, despite the fact the doctors were telling me no, that shouldn't be that worried yet. I could tell he wasn't reaching his milestones in the way he should have been. So that kind of grew some concerns. A lot of other developmental delays started to happen. And then by the time he was probably 1.5 to 2, he started having seizures. So it was very clear that there was something neurologically going on with him, and we just couldn't figure out what it was because we had him to all kinds of doctors. Nobody knew significantly what was the cause. So we ended up flying all over the United States to see geneticists and neurologists to see if they could figure out what the heck was wrong with him. And all of his tests kept coming up normal, which now I realize in spiritual hindsight, it doesn't surprise me that that was the case. Okay. So I was really going through a tough time there, just so worried about my baby. What's going to happen to him? What's his life going to be like? Am I doing everything I should be doing as his mother? And I was meditating pretty regularly then. And one day I remember sitting with myself and realizing I had all this fear in my heart. It was sort of resonating throughout my body. My energy said fear loudly. And I suddenly heard this voice during my meditation that said very loudly and very succinctly, don't focus on his diagnosis anymore. Learn to be in the moment with Evan. He's here to teach you something. And that changed the entire trajectory of my life, certainly of Evan's life, although I think he was going to go on doing what he needed to do regardless. So one thing led to another. And he absolutely taught me the importance of presence and living in the now and what that means for us, what that means not only for our bodies, but for our spirits and our souls and for our human experience here on this earth. So that said, we began to live our lives with lots of laughter and joy and happiness. And by the time he was 9 years old, I began working with the Colorado legislation to get some laws changed for families with children with disabilities. And here was this beautiful, beautiful child that had so much power that even though he was nonverbal, he was able to help me get a couple of laws signed into legislation that helped families with children with disabilities. The very last law that was signed by the governor, and he passed away that night at midnight. So it was clear to me that he had come and he had done what he was supposed to do. And he was happy to get the heck out of Dodge and get rid of that body that he was just dragging around here. And so, and yes, it was tough. From the human side of things, as a mother losing a child, I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, I was just letting you speak, but that's exactly the thought that was crossing my mind as well. I mean, what a very difficult thing for a mom or anybody in the family to go through.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. I wasn't sure what to do with that pain. It's a pain that is so great, and those of our listeners out there that know of somebody or have lost a child themselves understand that the pain is so deep that you think that you're going to die from this pain. But the thing is, you don't die from the pain. And that's what you have to learn to do, is to live with it.
There's something in what Julianne shares here that speaks to a kind of pain that many of us in different ways have felt. And while her experience is deeply personal, it also opens the door to a larger question. How do we make sense of what we carry, especially when it feels bigger than what we can explain? And that is where our conversation begins to expand.
So I remember as I was trying to find my footing and understand what all of this meant, I really leaned on the spiritual side of things. I remember after about a year, I realized that it was time to move forward. and that he was going to be with me always. So, gosh, that is how this all started with me. And
So that led you into learning about hypnosis.
in a roundabout and yet direct way. That's life, right? It's crazy how all of this stuff happens. And I know that he helped lead me here, but I always had an interest, not only spiritually, but the psychological aspect of human behavior and why we do the things we do. But it always just kind of stopped there. And I was never satisfied with those answers. I thought that they were okay from a third dimensional perspective, but I always felt deep down inside there was more. And that wasn't a conversation I felt safe having with a lot of people because they didn't necessarily see things that way. But it took a turn again, as life does, if you let it. And I began to realize as I talked to people who had done hypnosis, I began to watch sessions and I became really interested in them. So I started taking courses in different types of hypnosis modalities and ultimately found introspective hypnosis, which is the one that really hit home with me. And of course, now I have all of that as a foundation, in addition to how my clients have helped the modality morph into what human beings need.
Well, maybe just briefly tell us the difference between introspective hypnosis and other forms of hypnosis. What drew you to that specifically?
I think the thing about introspective hypnosis compared to some of the other hypnosis modalities that are out there, specifically QHHT and a few others, although QHHT is great, I am an absolute follower and lover of Dolores Cannon, and without Dolores, I wouldn't be here today. But they use a script. And being a retired teacher and feeling like I was almost being made to use a script when I taught and how that did not work well with the students, I realized that that was definitely the case with hypnosis. I didn't want to just stay within this package and couldn't go beyond the boundaries with these clients. I felt like if the client came to me, there was some deep, deep healing and shadow work that needed to take place that a script wasn't probably conducive to helping. So I realized that it wasn't about past lives necessarily, that if the client comes to me and they tell me what they need in order for their soul to heal or what they think they need in order for their soul to heal, I realized that if their soul takes them to a past life because that is happening in conjunction with their current life today, then yes, we need to go to a past life. But the soul carries all of these memories, and the soul will tell you where it needs to go in order to heal.
So I guess what you're saying is that this was a form of hypnosis where you felt you could be more responsive and intuitive in the moment with your clients rather than work with something that was already prefabricated, more cookie cutter.
That's exactly right. Well said. So thank you for that. Yes, that is a thing. It is an extremely intuitive modality coming from the practitioner standpoint. I'm not there to heal the client, but I am there to help the client's soul where it needs to go. And I help guide and also create a very safe environment in addition for the client. So any fears are put aside.
So what do people generally come to you for? I mean, I know that you mentioned fears, there must be anxieties, phobias, or perhaps even physical ailments. What do you see the most of?
It's funny because if you had asked me this a few years ago when I really first started introspective hypnosis, I would have said probably anxiety and fears. I think those are what clients used to come to me about. Now I'm finding that it has grown, it has broadened. Clients come to me and they want to know specifically what is happening with me that I'm sick all the time. And I keep going to doctors and nobody's giving me a diagnosis. And is this all in my head? What is going on with me? Some clients that come to me that have their own pretty strong intuition say to me, I think there's something much deeper to these fears that I have, yet I can't quite come to the foundation or the bottom of what's causing these fears. Some people come to me and they just tell me that they can't experience joy in the way that they feel like they should be experiencing joy, and they don't understand why. So they end up being some pretty heavy duty questions that are very difficult in some cases to address in just one session.
Right. So what does hypnosis allow then or access that other modalities can't? How do you get in there and help these clients?
So I think one of the things that's important about hypnosis, and right now I know that there's a lot of psychic mediums out there that just do beautiful, beautiful work. But I'm beginning to see a trend of potential clients and people who want to go to people and healers and light workers that will give them the answers. And the difficulty with that, if you approach healing that way for yourself as a client, you're not doing the shadow work that you need to do.
Mm,
And the difference between, for example, that modality versus introspective hypnosis is you're going to have to do the work yourself. When I say shadow work, you're going to have to go to the places that your soul wants you to go to. This your soul needs you and is showing you you need to go to in order to heal. So that means you're going to have to really get down, and in some cases you're going to have to dig in the dirt. And that takes some courage.
yeah. Not everybody
But
wants to do that.
and more importantly, it leads the client to understanding the importance of forgiveness. Because if we cannot begin with forgiving ourselves, and in some cases, forgiving others that we feel have wronged us, not only in this life, but if it comes up in past lives,
Hmm.
your soul will continue to carry that as unfinished business. And some people refer to it as karma, although working with clients, I realize now that karma is often misunderstood as not a punishment. Karma is simply a mandate that one makes for themselves that says, if I don't work through this issue, I'm going to continue to carry this with my concurrent lives until I do deal with it. So it's always up to the individual, but forgiveness is super important.
And that sometimes I think in our lives, people show up who we think are maybe negative influences. But if you look at it differently, if you look at what they trigger in you, then you can see how they're a lesson that needs to be learned in acceptance, forgiveness, love, or boundaries that, choosing self-love, that kind of thing. Does that come up frequently in your work?
All the time, all the time. And a lot of people that end up going to past lives understand that the individuals that are so prominent in their lives, perhaps a parent or a
Hmm.
spouse or even a child, a sibling, whatever the case may be, they discover very much a part of their soul family, and that they have lived many, many, many lives together, and
Yeah.
that there's unfinished business in relationships with those individuals, but that your role was different back in the day. Perhaps what in this lifetime you see as your mother and you, turns out that you were actually the mother or the father, and
Hmm.
your parent was the child back in the day. Perhaps your sibling was a parent to you back in the day. It's all kinds of things can happen, but the important thing is to realize that our bodies really have the ability to retain the impact of these suppressed emotions that we carry with us. And because our conscious mind has a tendency to safeguard us by
Hmm.
storing all of these emotions that are deep within the subconscious, that makes them really challenging to address. Those are the areas that a psychic medium can maybe allude to or bring
Hmm.
up, but how are you going to know what to do with it? I mean, perhaps the psychic medium can give you a sentence or two as to what they think you need to do, but this is about your journey. This is about you healing yourself. This isn't about me trying to heal you. It's about you finding the answers.
Yeah, and that's so very important because I think that creates more lasting change in a person. Like you said, rather than having a solution delivered, you had to work for it. You had to embody it. And that really goes deep. And I'm just curious, as you're talking about, sometimes it goes to past lives. How do you know? How do you know when that's the direction that somebody needs to go in order to heal? Are there any clues?
Absolutely. So typically, what happens is you ask the client to go to a place, a memory that they might have. Sometimes if intuitively I feel like I want them to come up with a sad memory because I feel like that's at the core or the foundation of what they're dealing with in this world, then I'll have them do that. But typically what will happen is when they're in trance and I ask them, where are you now? They'll begin to describe an environment, and I will ask them to describe what they're wearing. Are they male or are they female? Is it night or is it day? And very clearly, in just a short matter of time, you'll see that this is a past life. This is something. And a lot of times they could actually tell me what year it is. So they
Oh,
may be
wow.
going back to the Middle Ages or even prior
Mhm.
to that. And then you go with it. As a practitioner, you go with it because you're there to help support that memory. So we can, because the soul would not have taken the client there if they didn't need to go there.
So you have to trust the wisdom that comes through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a process that involves a very sacred and collaborative effort between the practitioner and the client. And the clients need to understand that it is respected in such a way that allows these sorts of experiences to come up with the client. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to say that.
Well, that's really important. Like you were saying at the beginning, you make sure that the environment is safe and that the client that you're working with feels that so that they can relax, I suppose, right? It's just like the whole nervous system response. If you're feeling anxious or you're feeling threatened, there's a less of an opening that's available. So I think to open up, you need to feel safe.
And if a client is feeling for some reason like they know there's a door they need to open, but they're afraid to do so, that's again where the practitioner comes in to gently guide them and help them understand this is the client's own inward journey that is inviting them to come through that door, and that there's no reason to feel afraid because it's not about fear. It's
Hmm.
about facing whatever issues has caused them to believe it's fearful.
So you create a container for that exploration.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
that's beautiful. So, what tends to emerge in these deeper regression sessions then? I mean, past lives, but without divulging too much about any particular client, are there stories that you can share that give us a glimpse as to the kinds of things that you might experience? You said different points in time, different genders. Anything in particular, an example that comes to mind that would be interesting for our listeners?
So many. I'll give you an example to start with of an individual that did not go to a past life, that had lots of issues going on with her parents, lots of betrayal things that were going on in her life. And what's funny is she was an individual that came to me, but wasn't convinced that she really needed the shadow work because she felt pretty confident that she had dealt with what she needed to deal with. I was able to help her go to some significant milestones in her life with each individual parent that caused her to take a turn and
Mm,
caused her to think and feel physically, emotionally, and spiritual the way that she felt today. And we were able to do a role play whereas the parent stepped in and spoke through her so that she was able to actually hear the parent's perspective and understand much more clearly as to why they made what seemed to be the hurtful decisions that they did. And then through that role play, switching back to her, she was able to then ask the parent questions of why they did certain things, and the parent was able to answer. I myself, one of my first introspective hypnosis sessions where my mentor hypnotized me, I had the same sort of thing going on. And I felt like, oh, I've dealt with all that, been there, done that. I'm good. And I realized, particularly through the role playing, that I had dealt with it in a certain way, but on a much more superficial level. I hadn't gone to the depths that needed to.
mm,
Ultimately, with this client that I am telling you about, ultimately, it was about through the understanding, the forgiveness that she discovered that she was able to feel and have toward both parents.
Do you think that's because she experienced it going through her as opposed to coming at her?
Well, Yes, I think that sometimes things that happen to us when we're children, we desperately try to understand, but there's no way we can as a
Mm,
child. There's just no way that we have the experience or the human understanding to know why our parents made these decisions. And a lot of times we have a tendency to think it was us,
of
it
course.
something that
Yeah.
we caused. And then again, through that role play, this client became much more a part of the circumstance and was able to see things almost as if you would be able to see from above. She was able
Yeah.
to suddenly be far more objective and understand that the foundation for what had happened wasn't as she thought.
Is that a little bit like a meditative state where you witness yourself? You become the witness as opposed to the person subjectively experiencing something?
It can be. It feels very much like a meditative state. You know, we go through in and out of meditative states all day, not even when we're meaning to. How many of us arrive home in our car and we've been upset about something that happened at work earlier that
Yeah.
day, and we just realize that we've been driving for 25 minutes and we don't
Mm,
even know how we got there.
yeah.
That there
Automatic
are
pilot.
lots and lots of different forms and examples of how we do go in and out of hypnosis throughout the day. So, yeah, I guess it could easily be compared to a meditative state.
You mentioned something earlier that I definitely want to come back to now, and that's about where things live in the body and in the soul. So let me start with, how do you see these deeper stories show up in the body?
So many different ways. Some of the more apparent examples I could give you is of an individual that I worked with who seemed to be just constantly giving, 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 but she wasn't able to receive from
Mm.
others. She felt that her life was about the giving and almost felt guilty when she would receive anything good, not to mention love. So there was that going on, but she had also mentioned that most of her life she had felt like there was something choking her when she wanted to stand up for herself, when she knew she needed to, she just couldn't. She couldn't say the words. And she said it felt like a sort of a choking sensation when every time she would try. So she just learned to sort of live with that, right? Well, as we worked through the process, and she went under, I think it was her third memory or so, she found herself being led to a stake, and she was going to be burned at the stake.
Ooh.
And the reason that she was going to be burned at the stake was because she had stood up for a friend who was an alchemist during that time. And this was relatively clear to me and to her, the way she described the environment. I would have to say that this probably took place during the Puritan
Okay.
movement here in the United States,
Hmm.
probably in the 1600s. And getting back to the story, she had stood up for her friend, and in doing so, found herself to be end up in this horrible situation. But she never would turn back or take back the truth that she spoke. One of the things that I did to help her understand what's happening to her body is to take her through what we refer to as an abreaction process.
I'm sorry, what was that
A-
again? A what?
a- abreaction. You take them through
Abreaction.
abreaction, and
Okay.
what that is that's helping the client to actually feel the experience that they're having. So if they're being hung, you don't have them skip over that. You have them
That's
go.
heavy.
It is really, really heavy, really,
Wow.
really heavy. Um, if a client is familiar with hypnosis and they tell me prior to their session that they're not comfortable doing that sort of thing at this point in time, then of course I will always honor what they are asking me. I will always honor the client with the caveat that they still have some work to do, but it's up to them. But in this case, this client actually, she was suffocating from the smoke and she was coughing
Ah.
and retching during her session. And
Hmm.
I realized that she had metaphorically stored all of this smoke in her throat and in her lungs. So she worked very hard to cough and give it up and to sort of retch until it was gone. And that was just one of the most amazing sessions. That went on about 4 hours.
I find that so, so interesting because from a mind body coaching perspective, when we look at the cycle of change that somebody goes through, they have to find awareness first and then sensation and feeling. And then they can sometimes vocalize it or find a way to express. It doesn't have to be vocalization, but that's one of the main ones. And then afterwards, the idea is to move it. So what your client did was literally the action that would have saved her if she could have stopped the smoke, if it had stopped, she could have done these things and then probably survived. And then I guess the session itself would be like the integration piece of that cycle. So that's the modality that I use, the framework that I use when I guide people. And this is very interesting because it reinforces that.
And the other aspect you asked about, how does it affect the body? The guilt that I had referred to in the beginning of the story, that guilt was there because she felt like she should have been able to save her friend's life, but wasn't able to, and had carried that guilt throughout many, many, many lifetimes consecutively until her soul was ready and happy to work through that and let it go and realize that there's nothing she could have done. And in fact, these are experiences that we choose often before we come here.
Obviously, I'm a believer that there's more than this lifetime. I'm not sure if I have all the answers. I don't know if anybody really does, but I'm very open to all kinds of conversations around that. Now, there could be people here listening today who don't believe in reincarnation. Does that happen to you? Does a client walk in and say, I want you to do some hypnotherapy or a session with me, but I don't believe in that stuff? What do you say to that?
What I say to them is that I respect and honor where they're coming from. My job as a hypnotherapist or a practitioner is never to change the individual other than what they tell me they want to change.
Mhm.
If you have a particular religious belief, or you are an atheist, or in a case where you don't believe in reincarnation, that's fine. Again, I'm not leading you to these places. This is you, the client, that's doing the healing, which is another reason that I love this process so much, because it's really up to the client to do as much healing as they want to. So that is number one most important thing, is the respect that I always make sure that my clients understand is there from me.
And I bet you it works anyway.
Well, it does. And if I can tell they're not ready to go somewhere that they need to go to, then I don't encourage that they go there. I may sort of steer them away and have them go to a different memory, but I will have a little talk with them after the session to say, this is what I'm seeing your soul wanted to do. And when you are ready, if you would like to explore further, we can always do that, but not until
Yeah.
you feel you're ready.
Yeah. That's very reassuring, I think, and people. Exactly. They get to where they are in their time. It's their personal journey. You were mentioning that at the beginning and throughout. And I think as people who guide others, that is really key. We have to make sure that we do act as guides. Again, we use the word container in that we hold space for people to grow and to evolve at their own rhythm. And yeah, I appreciate that as well because I've been in situations where I've been with people who have actually, not in these modalities, not these practices, but in other therapies, have taken things, I would say, a little too far just because they didn't know me well enough. And I wasn't like everybody else. And
See,
I
again,
reacted differently to certain things. But I
you
just,
mean
I'm
as a
curious.
client, you
Yeah,
did
yeah,
this?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I have had experiences where we're working in energy and things of that nature, and it just triggered me differently. And I think if I had been asked, I might have refused, or in the moment had felt more comfortable saying, "I don't like this. Let's try something else."
And the understanding that it is the responsibility of the healer and the practitioner to know how to get out of their own way. You are never helping to guide an individual or to support an individual's healing as a result of what you choose for them.
Yeah.
This is their journey. It's what they have chosen. It's where their soul is showing them and me that it needs to go to.
Have you seen people, speaking about the physical, have you seen people recover from illnesses with this practice, with hypnotherapy?
I had a lady who came to me who was having horrible headaches, and she had tried everything, and she had reached out to some other podcast individuals to see what if they knew of anybody that could help. So she was referred to me, and I always do an interview with the client first. And the interview can go anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on how much the individual, the client, wants to discuss or tell me about. I don't need a lot of information, but there are certain aspects of the life, certain milestones that I do need to know about, because that sometimes will give the practitioner a clue in case it comes up. They'll be ready. But she did not mention to me what had happened to her life when she was young, but it turned out she had been raped 3 different times as a little girl by some workers that had worked on her father's ranch. And she didn't ever tell anybody about it. And she felt like, because it kept happening, even though it would happen once every 2 years or so, she felt like it was absolutely her fault. So she had held on to that guilt and held on to those experiences in such a way that it was causing these unbelievable headaches. And I didn't even know that going into. She mentioned she had these headaches, but she didn't understand why. So she emailed me, I think it was about a week later, tell me that her headaches were completely gone. Because the bottom line, what we had done is not only helped her see and understand that these circumstances were not her fault, but in fact, she was able to forgive the individuals that had assaulted her. And then, here's a twist. She was able to go farther back in her previous life, and she realized that these individuals in this life, as a young girl that had raped her, was actually the original rapist of these rapers in this lifetime, in a past life. Does that make sense? I know it's very confusing.
I'm following you.
It was like one of those, you've got to be kidding me moments, And again, as a practitioner, when you hear this and you see this, you know that this is a place where the soul absolutely needed to go in order for this healing to take place.
Yeah.
So
that sounds very karmic.
Yeah. And again, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, it's not a punishment. It's more of a balancing. It's more of an understanding, so that you can gain the empathy and compassion we need to understand that we all are connected.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's it, right? We're developing compassion for ourselves and for the people around us. And, it's a very cliched thing, but it really does come down to love, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. If you boil it all down, all the experiences, everything that we go through, whether it's good or whether it's bad, through the process of forgiveness and compassion, you ultimately get to love. We have to go through so much to understand things.
I know. And here's
I want the fast road. But
I know.
Yeah.
And when we all want the fast road, right?
Yeah.
Now, at this point in our conversation, we begin to explore something that you may or may not have heard of. It's what's known as polydimensional travel. Polydimensional travel is a way of describing experiences that arise in deeper states of awareness, where consciousness isn't limited to the here and now. People may encounter what feels like other lifetimes, symbolic narratives, or different layers of their own inner world, experiences that don't follow linear time, but can still carry emotional or psychological truth. Whether these are understood as literal or symbolic, what matters is the meaning they hold and the way they can help someone understand themselves more deeply. So as you listen, notice what happens in your body, what feels distant, and what feels unexpectedly familiar, because sometimes what we can't fully explain still knows how to reach us.
This is a thought that'll keep you awake at night.
Oh, goody.
Right? As if I haven't already relayed something. But what part of introspective hypnosis that I do, I also refer to as the polydimensional aspect of the soul, which is an indication that our souls are infinite because we are a part of source.
Mhm.
We are a part of the universe. We are part of God, whatever you want to call it. That's infinite. It's all knowing. It's omnipotent. So your soul, as it is a part of source, wants you to be able to feel that love and understand love for others through your human experiences and experiences on other planets, if that's where
Mhm.
your soul wants to take you, because
Mhm.
I've had that happen a lot as well. So,
Going to other planets?
absolutely. For myself, can tell you that I realized through a hypnosis session that my son, Evan, and I were on Pleiades together, that we actually came from there. And I say came from because knowing with the caveat that there is no such thing as past lives, because everything is happening now. Those of us who try to understand quantum and mechanical physics,
Mhm.
that it's not a linear journey.
Well, that's something that I've discussed actually the whole concept of time in one of my episodes when I was looking at the truth of witchcraft, and we got into that as well. That all time is happening at the same time, so it's definitely something to sit with and see how you feel about it, because maybe there can be some enlightened moments that come from considering that maybe it's not exactly the way that we think it is, and that definitely that it's not linear, that maybe it's more points on a spiral.
That's exactly right. And, if I hadn't experienced the polydimensional traveling myself as a client, if I hadn't seen it with my clients, if I hadn't discussed these concepts with people who have had near death experiences that have come back to tell us that this is true, that the reality is not happening here on this earth, but in fact on the other side of the veil, and that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way
Hmm.
around.
Yeah, gathering information in the 3D and taking it back, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly like that.
Oh, there's so much we could talk about.
However, we choose to understand these experiences, whether as memory, symbolism, or something else entirely, what matters is the impact they have, the way they can bring clarity, soften what's held, and open something new. The key here is that everyone's healing journey is unique.
Just to finish up on the body really briefly, I mean, there is one question that I don't know how relevant it is to healing, but it piques my curiosity, and that is things like that show up on the body. Have you been able to validate that these things have possibly some past life relevance?
When you're talking about marks on the body, I have not actually had a client myself that has shown a mark on their body that was able to connect it to something that had happened in a
Hmm.
past life. But um, I have had some of my colleagues that have experienced that sort of thing. One of my colleagues, interestingly, this client of theirs had a birthmark just beneath the right shoulder blade. I think it was the right shoulder blade, and they didn't know why. And sure enough, they discovered that in a previous life, they were a soldier
Hmm.
just after the Civil War. And they were here on this continent, oh, I should say this continent, North America, and they were fighting Native Americans, indigenous people. And this client was shot in the back with a arrow. And so, interestingly, that my colleague told me that they found this out because after the fact, when they were debriefing after the session, this client had told them that they had always wondered why they had that birthmark in that
Okay.
same place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it happens.
Okay, so if we talk about patterns, right? You might see that in certain healing phases, or when there's a particular part, an emotion, or something that a person needs to learn. You see certain patterns and you see things emerging from past lives. How do you differentiate that from ancestral patterns?
Well, first of all, it's important to keep in mind that in terms of introspective hypnosis, the term polydimensional actually describes this boundless and multifaceted, really, nature of the soul. So it's in essence, it's that it's not confined to a single lifetime or a body or even a reality. What I can tell you is that certain things can happen as a result of your behavior can change as a result of something that happened with your ancestors in other lives or even your current life. But the experiences that you have chosen for yourself. So, for example, you're talking about patterns and chronic behavior that you see as destructive in your life. Perhaps you are an individual that would love to have a loving relationship in this lifetime, but every attempt at that has, in your eyes, has failed, and you don't understand why. And throughout a session or two, you begin to see and understand that during some past lives, or a past life specifically, you were hurt terribly by an individual, either an ancestor or, say, a spouse or a significant other. And you actually mandated during that lifetime. And in some cases, when you're leaving that lifetime and getting ready to die and go to the other side, make a mandate that no matter what, you will never allow yourself to be that vulnerable ever, ever again. So when these mandates are made all the time, we've all done them like crazy throughout our lifetimes. So you see that again, that's that boundless and multifaceted nature of the soul that gets stuck in the crux of that has to be released.
So if you see patterns like, for example, say, in a couple of generations in a row, women losing their husbands early, do you think that's something like that? Some kind of more of a family lineage, ancestral karma that needs to be cleared out?
So are you saying somebody in this current lifetime maybe has been married 3 times and in all 3 cases their husband died?
No, I'm saying, what if the mother's husband died young and then the daughter's husband dies young and so on, something like that?
So that to me would tell me that that's much more clearly, and I use the word clearly with some reservations, is an agreement that was made on the other side before they came to this earth. There was something that taking on those roles, there was something that the daughter in this lifetime needed and wanted to learn from the mother. And if it doesn't get learned and it doesn't get handled in the way that it needs to, then this sort of thing will continue to happen until the lesson is learned, because we place these things there ourselves. Nobody does it to us. I know that there are lots of hypnotherapists out there that deal with negative entities that are in fact connected to the body, and as a result can create behaviors and or pain or health issues. I see that more as a metaphor, because I see it all the time with my clients too, when we do a body scan toward the end. More of a metaphor that this individual has chosen to take this on and make it a part of who they are or a part of their life, as if it's actually stuck to them, to the point where it's literally creating a pain in their head or in the womb or in the chest. Lots of chakras that are involved. I don't mean to make this sentence so esoteric, but it is.
Yeah.
It's an esoteric subject. So stop me if I'm getting way out of hand here.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is because I'm seeing a lot more, say on social media or in just discussions with people, I'm seeing a lot more of this Right. And now I've incarnated to clear out this karma that's been ancestral or in part of a lineage. Are you seeing that? That there are souls now that are taking on more than their share, or they're agreeing that they can handle that kind of thing?
I don't see it often, but I do see it because everybody's journey is so unique. What I do see and have recognized is there are spirits that have come to this earth, and they, as a human being, they want to experience way too much, way too much. And from what I understand through my clients and also individuals who've had near death experiences, these decisions are made on the other side when it's a little bit easier to make these decisions because you
Mhm.
don't have the human emotions and the fear on the other side that you go through on this third dimension. So as a result, they do sort of oversaturate themselves with way too many experiences because they really want to learn the most that they can in one lifetime. I again going back to ancestral issues, again, I see that more as an agreement that was made between individuals in the soul family and the client that they wish to come here and experience those things. But I don't believe it's almost as if there's an insinuation of a curse. And I don't believe that's the case. I believe we
Yeah.
choose to
Okay.
experience these things.
So it's more about learn the lesson and then you can move on. And until that happens, then this is going to keep showing up.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I would love to now shift gears into, we've talked about, the lessons and the hard stuff and the heavy stuff and doing the work and getting through and the shadow. And then once things come into the light, into awareness, you can see some shifting. What about gifts? What about talents? Things that people are born with that aren't easy to explain, child prodigies or just people who have an affinity for something. Do you see that as part of a past life?
So, first of all, I'm glad you brought that up because the fact that healing takes place with an individual client doesn't mean that healing can only happen through negative or horrific circumstances in a past life or this current life. That's how we have a tendency to learn the most. But there are things like you referred to as gifts and things that happen in this lifetime too that clients discover is a result of something that happened to them in a past life. So, what I am seeing a lot of is clients that are coming to me, they have a tendency, most of them have a tendency to have the gift of intuition that we all have intuition. We all have the ability to tap into what other people are thinking, telepathy and that sort of thing. It's
Mhm.
just with some of us, our antennas are raised a little higher than others. When those individuals realize they've come to this lifetime and they have these sort of gifts, we can usually understand through the hypnosis progression, we can understand why those gifts are so important, why they have them in
Mhm.
this particular time, and what they need to do to continue to help that gift grow or
Right.
expand.
Yeah. And I think in astrology, you look to the North Node. That's my understanding now. I'm not an astrologer, but I do find it interesting. And I think you have the North Node and the South Node. And the North Node is where you're headed, and the South Node is where you're coming from. So you
Mhm,
take the lessons, and then you move them forward, and they're generally opposite each other. So, like, it's always the opposite sign in the zodiac. So it's just an interesting parallel there as well, that maybe we're bringing in a lot of information from our past, then we're fine tuning it and then pointing it in a specific direction. So it's like you have the lesson, but then you've got the advantage, if you will, from a past life. You've got both of these things happening at once. Do you have any comment on overlap between those kinds of systems?
Well, one of the things my guides are telling me right now that there are some listeners that are either have or going to have this question. Why do we have to go through a hypnosis session, or why do we have to go see a a psychic medium or a shaman to understand these aspects of ourselves or our past.
Mhm.
Why is there this forgetting that happens to all of us when we come to this current lifetime? Wouldn't it be easier for us to know everything and then come to this lifetime? And I have to say with caution, think of this. When I talk about the polydimensional soul, your soul is an eternal traveler, and it exists across layers of consciousness, realms, and timelines all at once. And it, as a result, it has the ability to move between different dimensions or universes, which are considered separate realities or planes in existence. What if you came to this lifetime knowing every time you had been burned at the stake, every time you'd been hung at the gallows, every time that you had been a beggar in the Middle Ages or abused or et cetera? Like, could you only imagine if you've lived 150 to 550 lifetimes, you wouldn't be able to handle it. And
Yeah.
so there has to be a forgetting in order to have a remembering. And
Mhm.
through introspective hypnosis, the remembering that you will do is the remembering your soul wants you to go through in order to help you in this lifetime. There are
Yeah.
things that have happened to you in previous lifetimes that don't necessarily matter anymore. You've worked through them. You've dealt with them. You've
Yeah.
learned. So was that a tangent or did I answer your question?
No, I think I really think I understand the connection to that then. So it's creating a pathway. It's saying some things you've lived made an impact and were dealt with, and other things still need to be integrated, and you need to move beyond and into a new lesson or a new embodiment of something. And yeah, and I think I'm really glad that you brought that up because you're correct. I'm sure a lot of people listening would think that and say, well, why do I need to go through all of this? Why don't I just remember everything? If that's the purpose, right? If we're here to learn, then why do we have to forget?
And
Um,
again, I just have to reiterate, it is so important to know that this is a safe journey, introspective hypnosis. Nothing is forced. I don't make the client go to these places. This is something that your soul wants you to go to. And if you're not ready, your soul will not take you there. So this is nothing to be afraid of.
yeah, it's a point on your journey that you've chosen. So I'm curious to know then, do you see people physically after a session? Do you see like a softening in their body, in their facial expressions?
That is one of the great, I'm so glad you asked me that question. That's probably one of the greatest. See, now I'm getting chills again. Um, there is a lightening of the load that takes place when the individual comes out of the trance. They sort of wipe the sleep from their eyes, so to speak, remember almost everything that they went through, but they have a particular in every single case, even those that went through some heavy duty past lives or circumstances in this life that was hard to relive or remember. They have a glow about them, a smile that you can see how their whole being has just been lightened, the heaviness that they've been carrying throughout their lives in this lifetime and probably other lifetimes in a lot of cases are completely lifted. And I cannot tell you how many people say to me actually those words, I feel lighter. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the part of it. Oh my God, as a journey to be able to be a part of people's healings and to travel with them to these places, what an honor it is as a practitioner to be able
Yep.
to go there. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. I 100% agree with that. So I just want to add one more question about the gifts because like I said, we talk a lot about what we have to go through and having to forget in order to come back and face things again. Otherwise, maybe we wouldn't do it. But do you feel like these gifts that you're able to uncover through hypnosis, do they point to the soul's purpose in this lifetime?
Absolutely. Because in hypnosis, it's all about the soul. So if somebody is meant to come to this earth carrying gifts and it's a part of their life path that understand with the counsel on the other side, as well as their soul family, they have chosen, then that's a part of your life path. That becomes your life path. And you can never get away from that. We do have free will, and you can throw as many obstacles as you want to in your path if that's what you want to do. But eventually, you'll be able to understand that there are some gifts there that you perhaps have been afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now time for you to let that gift expand and grow, because that's a huge part of your purpose here. And that can be validated through a session. Absolutely.
So it's a reclamation of who you are and what you're here to do.
A reclamation. That's a good term for it. Yeah.
So after you've worked with someone and you've been through the different layers and looked at the lessons and the healing and the gifts, how do people bring these insights into their everyday lives afterwards? You know, you do a session, it's mind blowing or not, but I mean, it's impactful. And then you walk out the door. Then what?
I had a client who said she'd come to me because she had some other issues. And so that's what she really wanted to focus on. Through the session, we began to realize that that's not where her soul wanted to go. She had had a couple of miscarriages early in her life. They had no children. And she was sure, because it came up in our interview, that she'd had these miscarriages. And she said, no, she didn't feel that there was any need to touch on that aspect of her life, because she had dealt with it. She'd gotten lots of therapy, and she was good. She was at peace. Well, that's not where her soul took us. Her soul did not take us to the places she thought she needed to heal. Her soul took us right to those miscarriages and had her go through the miscarriages again, only to realize at the end, in both cases, she had allowed a hole or a darkness in her womb to exist where those miscarriages had taken place. She had never filled the void, so to speak, with the love and the happiness and the joy, or the things that those little spirit babies wanted her to know or to be taught. So we worked through all of that. And at the end, they came to her and actually had some beautiful messages that they wanted her to hear. And she was able to verbalize those messages. And again, that's what's so incredible, and why the client is to be treated with such respect, because the soul knows where it needs to go. And so in some cases, you don't even realize that you need certain healing, which in fact you do. You thought you've dealt with, but therapy certainly has its place. Psychological therapy has its place for sure. And it's done some great things throughout history and for a lot of people that are in therapy today. But the thing that I like about introspective hypnosis really gets to the meat of things a lot quicker, a lot faster. You don't have to just spend an hour once a week for months and months in order to get to that place.
And so this woman who had this insight then knew that she could say, all right, now I can begin that work, right? Like go out and say, how can I bring more joy into my body? How can I give more care, maybe even to that part of my body? If we're talking chakras, we're in the sacral chakra. So all things related to the unconscious actually live in the sacral chakra. But in this particular case, it's also creativity. It's the womb. It's the origins of humanity. So maybe would you say to someone, I mean, maybe you don't suggest how they go and do it, but would a healing path look something like, well, what could you create that would make you happy?
So I'm glad you used the word create, because that is also, the womb is all about creation as well, as we know. And in this case, and I apologize, I realized that this was originally your question and I don't think I answered it. But to answer it now, she called me a couple of weeks afterwards and told me that she, not only from a physical standpoint did she feel lighter, but she said that the creativity that suddenly had come to her life after that session, little by little, and it progressed to the point where it just got bigger and bigger. And she said that she attributes it to the session that she had. So, yeah, I do see that among dozens and dozens of other people that I've spoken to that are able to take what they've learned and apply it and consider it a gift in their life today.
Some would say it's magical. It brings me to the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, Julianne, do you believe in magic?
I would have to be a fool not to believe in magic. Magic to me is analogous to love or the wind, for example. We can't see the wind, but we can feel the wind. We can't see the wind, but we can see the effects of the wind through the trees. Without magic, if I didn't believe in the magic of the soul, then I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't be able to help so many souls heal in the way that they needed to heal. So I have nothing but gratitude for this lifetime and the magic that abounds within it.
Well, I have an immense amount of gratitude for this conversation that we've had today. I thank you so much for sharing your deep insights with us. And I hope that we have a chance to have another chat sometime soon.
Oh, thank you, Sonia. This has just been, I don't get an opportunity to talk in depth about introspective hypnosis like this. And this has just been a joyful podcast for me because I want more people to understand the availability they have that's out there for healing if they choose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, these conversations definitely are important, and putting this information out into the world is part of both of our missions, considering that you have your podcast, Souls on Tap, and mine. I'm sure that our paths will cross again.
And as a fellow podcaster, excuse me for interrupting, I just want to say thank you very much for what you're doing with your podcast, because these formats are exactly what's helping people understand how they can heal out there and the different modalities that are available, and just being a part of the discussion and the feelings that we all have.
And if our listeners would be interested in working with you directly, can they find your information and how to get a hold of you on your website?
Absolutely. It's very easy. My website is www.juliannethon.com. Go there and hopefully it will answer most of your questions. And I also indicate my email for those of you who have extensive questions. And I always do free consultations with anybody that is not sure whether or not they really want to go through this process, where we just talk about it.
We'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes.
As we bring this conversation to a close, I'd like to invite you into an embodied reflection. If there's something in your life that feels hard to explain, but carries a strong hold, it may not be as random as it seems. What the soul remembers and what the body knows often holds the story beneath the story. And bringing the past to light might be the first step toward releasing it, toward understanding yourself more deeply and moving forward with greater clarity. And as you sit with this, just take a moment. Notice your breath. Notice your body. And gently bring your awareness to whatever is present for you right now. There's nothing you need to change, nothing you need to figure out. Just an invitation to feel, to be. And maybe what begins to reveal itself in that space is something you've always known. That your soul is here, within you, in every sensation, in every knowing, steady, present, revealing, responding, showing you in its own way that your soul is the magic. Remember that. And if you'd like to take this a little deeper, I've created a simple 5-minute practice just for you, a space to pause, to check in, and to begin listening to what your body already knows. This is a free audio download, so be sure to go grab that. And if you're feeling called into something more immersive, I also offer an online Yoga Nidra workshop where we move into deeper states of rest, awareness, and interconnection. This is a great place to begin your personal transformation journey. And for those of you who feel ready to experience this work in person, I will soon be offering my signature Contain Her Magic experience at the Big Retreat Festival in Pembrokeshire, Wales. That's happening on May 24th. This is a mind-body coaching workshop, a space to move, to feel, to reconnect, and to reclaim your light in a deeply embodied way. We're going to have a lot of fun. You'll find all the details in the show notes, and I would love to have you there. Well, my lovelies, I hope you feel uplifted and inspired. Remember, your fire is sacred. Hold it, nurture it, and let it light your path without burning out. And I hope that you'll join me for the next episode of Contain Her Magic, a sacred space to honor your path, discover your unique gifts, and to unapologetically embody your truth and your joy. I'm Sonia Bayo. Until next time, burn bright and hold on to your magic.